So, welcome everybody to the Q&A. How you doing, Jay
Yeah, I'm
and Dr.
doing
Ali?
good.
So, we just seen the movie.
Well, it's not the first time I've seen a movie. I've seen a movie like 5 billion times by this point, and many different forms and bad edits and everything.
All right, so I guess we'll start with a question from the audience, I guess, right?
Yeah, just do one for them first.
So, before we do that, I just want to introduce ourselves. My name is Killshot. I am the server owner. I'm the creator of KS Max.
Okay, yep, I'm Dr. Al, also known as AMK Soundtracks. I composed the soundtrack for this movie, ЈMIT. Yeah.
I'm Jay. I made this film. I mainly made it. There was an assistant director and a cinematographer who was on for the shoot days, but I kind of wrote, directed, and edited it.
Okay.
I'm a uni student. I'm from England, if you can't tell. And yeah, I'm about to turn 20, so that's kind of an idea of like my age and everything.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna get Denova on here.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Hey. Hi.
Okay. Sorry, just late here, so whispering. But yeah. Wow, that was really good. I wanted to ask. Obviously, I can see a lot of Nolanisms in there. It's very Tenet inspired, obviously, but like, what were some other kind of movies that I don't know help like inspire you like to make this? Because it definitely was a lot of Tenet, but it felt different as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does feel more like Tenet than I would have normally intended, but because I had to shoot the whole thing handheld and guerrilla, that kind of gives it a similar feel to Tenet, which is kind of generally shown in a handheld sort of way. Nolan and kind of Van Hoytema, like they frame shots really well, but the framing doesn't like draw attention to itself, and that was kind of what I was forced into. I wasn't able to spend ages on like perfectly composing lighting and everything. Compared to like I don't know, like Villeneuve, who's like really perfect for everything. So there's more Nolan in the directing than I would usually intend. I'd say another big influence would be Michael Mann. No, not necessarily his style, because his style is very much kind of unique and wouldn't have applied to this film. But just the efficiency, I think, of the way he shoots kind of dialogue and action stuff. And I'd say probably the biggest influence would be Christopher McQuarrie, who, I mean, he did, well, his main films have been the last like 4 Mission Impossible films. I think he also co-directed Top Gun Maverick. And in those films, there's a lot of action, but there's a lot of kind of information and devices and plot beats and everything like that. And so it's very efficient with the way that he's able to kind of show those sequences. And again, with those films, the cinematography is like absolutely astonishing, but doesn't necessarily draw attention to itself, but more of what's on screen, what it's actually trying to show. For example, there's a scene in like the beginning of Mission Impossible Fallout, which was a film which really inspired me to be a filmmaker. I know it's like a blockbuster action film; it's not like an art film, but it inspired me. But anyways, there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where he has the option to get in a car and get a case and then drive out of there. And it could usually be shown with like multiple shots, but he shows it with like a close-up of the case. Then it pans up to a shot of the car with the door open. Then it pans across and kind of focuses a bit more to show the tunnel you can drive down. And then the camera pulls back and it shows Tom Cruise's face deciding what to do. So I think, you know, and especially having to shoot this guerrilla, I had to operate like that as well. So yeah, I think a lot of it was more circumstances rather than choice. Oh, by the way, someone who just watched it can't make the Q&A, but just asked me a question. So I'm going to respond to that
Okay.
now, if that's okay. They ask, because they're still writing, but They asked how detailed was your storyboard. Okay, that's an excellent question. So I actually storyboarded the whole film on an app called Storyboarder, and with that you can kind of make mock 3D scenes of like mannequins, and you can kind of choose between different like poses and stuff. So I use a lot of that, especially for everything that was in the fort, which was the where the deal happened, the sort of the arc, the kind of the stone arc. Especially because I knew there were going to be characters having to be on another level and look down and everything. I needed to know what shots would work and what shots wouldn't. But even then, a lot of the storyboarding did go out the window. But it was a good safety net. There were also a lot of locations which I storyboarded for, which we ended up not using. Everything inside the red and blue corridors was basically a location which I had toured, but we mainly kind of improvised a lot of that on the 2 days we shot there. Although the sequences there weren't too complicated, so we didn't necessarily need to storyboard. We had 2 action scenes in there, but there wasn't really any reversed stuff, so it worked out fine. So the extent to which I actually applied and used the storyboard and stuck to it depended, but I made a very thorough storyboard. And I made a very thorough shot list for the big fight scene, the one with the inversion. Although again, I didn't really stick fully to that. So yeah.
Okay. Why make Tenet? Sorry, why make emmett?
Why make Tenet? Well, I'd love to have made that film. Why make Emmett? I mean, Tenet came out like 3 years ago, but when Tenet came out, right, I was super hyped for that film. The first film I watched in the cinema after the lockdown. Well, actually, that's not true. I watched Inception, like a re-release. But like, Tenet was like a big film I watched in like the BFI IMAX, and it was just kind of mine. I just loved it so much, right? The experience of it was kind of a roller coaster and a puzzle at the same time. It was insane. And so I was really inspired by the film and the fact that the concept was obviously not easy, but it was simple. That all you really needed was very well planned backwards footage. You just reverse it in post. Like, it's not hard. So this links to basically the process of making a film, which I started around about February 2021. So I was still kind of in my Tenet phase, right? And I decided I wanted to try write a forwards backwards dialogue scene, kind of like the one in film Tenet. And I ended up writing the deal. So I wanted to write one where the dialogue worked both for the motivations for both characters, even though they're moving in opposite directions of time. And the way I wrote it was kind of lots of trial and error and a very complicated way of writing it, but it became quite fun. So I went to my friend, like Sam, he ended up being like an assistant director on this film. And I was like, I might want to film this because it would be pretty easy to film. Because again, you just kind of really need to shoot shot, reverse shot, and then reverse footage and stuff. And then I was like, well, I can't just do this deal. I can't just have this one scene. Like this, it's like, what? I was like, I want to do a bit more. Maybe have a bit of a fight scene. Maybe have a bit more plot, a bit more intrigue and tension and character development. And then the script ended up ballooning over the next couple months to about a 25-page script. And that's when I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this film, but I'm going to try. And even if I don't, there'll be some good experience along the way. And so we ended up shooting it over summer. I mean, we were originally going to shoot it around about June, July, but some actors couldn't make it, and obviously we had to postpone it as films usually go. And in August, we finally shot it over 5 days. And then why did the film not come out a year and a half ago then? And the reason is because after I shot it in August 2021, I then moved to university the month after, and I got very busy with life. In a good way, is a good time here, but obviously I wasn't able to spend all my time working on emmett, like editing it, which is a very long post-production process. But I ended up finishing it around about Easter 2022. But then my one of my drives corrupted, and this was the drive with my project file. All of the footage and all of my most of my files on my computer were completely fine because they're on my main drive. But this smaller drive with my project file crashed. So I lost emmett, apart from this really crappy kind of first draft cut I'd made. So I kind of left it for like a year, especially because I made other films as part of my uni, and I didn't feel like editing the same film like for the second time in a row. It just been a bit much. So that's why over the last couple months I revisited the film, edited it, and the film was a lot better because I'm a much better editor and a much better color grader as well. So that's the reason why it came out so late. So that's a comprehensive timeline of the film's creation, which is 2 years pretty much now. Crazy.
I was gonna ask you this next question, which was, how did you make emmett?
How did I make it? I mean, in terms of the inversion stuff, I mean, that's, I guess, self-explanatory. I mean, it's really about the planning more than the actual shooting of it. About planning how you're going to make things look, kind of make backwards things link with forward things, as in where you cut and everything. So yeah, planning was the most important thing. That's why post-production was so important and so long, and that's what, linking back to the storyboarding stuff that I told you about. And then in terms of the other howls, like how did we make? I mean, we shot it in 5 days. Sorry, we shot it over 5 days, which for a half an hour film is not very advisable, especially for like a thriller science fiction. So the howl was really about really long shooting days and being very efficient with our planning of how we're going to shoot, and a lot of guerrilla work, a lot of improvisation. So yeah, I mean, and it worked out. I think I'm really happy with the result. There are lots of shots where I'm like, damn, I wish that was in more focus, or I wish I shot it in another way. And there are some little beats which I wish I'd shot that were kind of in the script that I'd had in my mind, but I didn't get around to shooting. But I mean, yeah, how did we shoot the film? We shot it as good as we could, which is, yeah.
Hi. Just wanted to ask, because you mentioned how long the movie took in post-production with your university, and you mentioned just briefly now in that last question, like how there was some stuff you'd wish you'd done differently. Like, how did you was it hard, like trying to finish up the post-production process? Like, did you feel overwhelmed by like mistakes that you saw, or were you like, did you remain like super proud of the product throughout? Was there like any low points there, or hope that makes sense?
I was never really like negative about it. I think, as I said, like when I'd finished the first cut and then the project file was lost, I knew that if I was to edit it again, it would be a bit intense. It would be a bit much. And so to an extent, that could have happened. But I was generally more proud. I mean, like, I just turned 18 when I was actually shooting it, when I during production. Like, I feel like for an 18-year-old making something like this, you can't not be proud. And I'm sure he could have done it better. I'm sure there are other people who could have done it better. But there's an extent to which I'm like, oh, this shot's a bit out of focus, or this, this line isn't very well directed or something. And I just have to tell myself to kind of shut up and go like, yeah, but I am like 19. And in terms of like, I've submitted this to some film festivals and it's going to be on YouTube and stuff. And I think the aim of student filmmaking isn't to make a kind of a crystal perfect film, but to stretch yourself, and to try new things and to prove, your ability to, for example, pull off a difficult concept or to manage a difficult shoot or something like that. And I had to overcome a lot of those things. That doesn't mean that I'll ever be hired to do a action or a science fiction film, but the skills that you develop from doing something intense and difficult like this translate into even just doing like a small TV production shoot, that you're going to have to deal with difficult things. You're going to have to learn how to improvise, how to work your way around difficult, like complex long scripts. So yeah, I couldn't really, I didn't let myself get bogged down with negative things, and I think I kind of learned to appreciate it for being the scrappy film that it is. And I tried to polish it as much as I could in post-production as well, with kind of color grading and I think the editing and stuff's like I'm pretty happy with it. So yeah, there's not really much room to be upset really about it.
I wanted to ask you because I'm also trying to make it into the industry myself. Is how did you create a reverse shot from script to screen?
As in the backward the inversion.
Yeah, like how would you like vision it in your mind?
Um, that's I guess I just kind of did. I don't know. I think the thing is that because I'd watched Tenet so many times, and I was part of like the community on like the Tenet subreddit and stuff that would like rigorously dissect the movie and like analyze it to its very bones and like analyze every single like plot beat. I'd kind of learned to think in a new way. Like I'd learned to think backwards. Like I'd learned to think kind of dialectically or whatever. Like so, I think that's. I mean, if you want to make a Tenet film, then yeah, the first things I'd suggest is to study Tenet, not just in the way it was made, but to just learn to get your head around that concept. If you even
I've
watch my
already,
film,
I've already studied
yeah,
Tenet. Trust me.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
here.
Likewise.
I think I've watched it like at least 800 to 900 times.
100, oh damn! I think I've seen it. I've seen it probably about 10 times. I try not to watch films I love too much because then they start to lose the magic. I haven't seen it in a while because I want to regain the magic after.
I think the problem with me is because I'm doing the max, I'm constantly watching it over and over again. You know,
Yeah,
I mean the
yeah,
max definitely took like at least 100 because I'm rewatching it, testing the audio, etc., etc. But yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
invite. Um, let's see.
Good questions though. Keep them going.
Hi, this one's for Dr. Al. I wanted to ask what the process was like composing for this movie. Like, how much of it did you have to work with at the time, and how did you like come up with the various moods? And because the music like is cohesive, but it shifts stylistically over the course to fit each individual scenes.
Mm.
Like, what helped you pick that?
Good question. So I think first and foremost, I looked at the soundtrack for Tenet, composed by Ludwig Göransson. That was like my main source of inspiration. I'm sure Jay would agree with me that like, you know, we both had this like extreme like interest in Tenet and like a love appreciation for the film basically, and that included all aspects like especially the concept of time inversion, but I think the soundtrack as well really elevated that movie. Just its use of synths and its like orchestral like instruments mixed in with the synths, and it's kind of this like thriller mood, but it's also got these like really sick moments, like, you know, the Freeport scene. Just yeah, I think I looked at that soundtrack and said, how can I make it basically like copy it without like ripping it off completely, without plagiarizing it. That was like the first stage, but then Jay and I spoke about like what we thought what we envisioned the soundtrack to be, and there was a lot of talks for, okay, like for this scene we want this kind of mood, for this scene we want this kind of mood. There was actually some temp music already over the like very early, the rough edit of the film that I watched. It's basically some tracks from Tenet were put over the original shots of that first draft, and I was able to kind of listen to those scenes with that music to kind of get an idea for what the vibe is. So you can probably hear a lot of like similarities between some of the tracks I composed and some of the tracks from Tenet. That's because like the mood of that scene is kind of defined by that track. But we also talked about other things like how we wanted to kind of include sounds of trains and sounds of water to kind of represent like time can move. So like trains are a linear force. They have a strict path, right? And then water's a lot more free flowing. It's kind of like how fate can be a direct deterministic path, or it can be a sort of free will thing. And if you listen carefully, you'll actually hear like the sound of a train, the sound of crashing waves on the ocean embedded into the soundtrack. And so I think the mood, so that's like more thematic stuff, but like the mood of each scene really like came from a place of listening to the Tenet soundtrack, but also thinking about like, okay, how can we, what mood is required for this scene? If it's like a brooding kind of scene, then I want to use like more sort of subtle, quiet synth sounds. But if it's an action scene, then I want that percussion, I want that loudness. Yeah,
just to jump off on that, in terms of the temp music, really good description of the trains and the waves, by the way. That was pretty much what I was going to say. But yeah, trains can only go backwards and forwards, and they're like an unstoppable force and everything. And I just personally find trains kind of cool, and that's why I wanted to shoot a scene on a train. And actually, with that scene, that was a very hard scene to shoot, and all the dialogue in there was done in post. But originally, I wanted a bit where people get on and off the train, but because they're inverted, they'll be like moving backwards and look really cool. Problem is that nobody got on the train on a few stops between our journeys, so that was kind of disappointing. But with the temp music, I used music from Tenet to edit the first draft of the film, and I edited it like pretty heavily. I didn't I changed like the timing of the tracks, and because obviously a tracker from Tenet has specific beats going on at specific like points in the track, so I changed it quite a lot, and that really helped me edit, because it helped me kind of gain, this is an action film and everything, and without the music it would have felt kind of empty to edit. But yeah, then once we did the temp music, I sent it off, and then Dr. Al did the actual score, and I think he revised it a few times, but it generally stayed pretty similar, because I was pretty happy with it from the beginning. And I said, like, look, obviously we want it to be Tenet inspired, but don't feel like you have to copy everything in a soundtrack. You want it to feel like Tenet. You don't want it to be like Tenet in that sense.
Yeah.
And that's completely what I think was pulled off. And there's a lot of kind of direct callbacks to the Tenet soundtrack, like the near the end when she kind of picks up the case and goes in the blue kind of turnstile for the last time. It has that do like that speeding up thing. But then there's a lot of kind of unique stuff as well, and we have our own.
Yeah.
We also have the Tenet like protagonist theme in the beginning of the film as well, as a little kind of bit of a hint.
A little wink to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then we had our own leitmotifs as well. We had a leitmotif basically for the duo, for the character. That's then reversed and inverted, and it becomes less, because there's a reverse and a forward version of it, which are obviously technically two different motifs, but they're not strictly used for one character or the other, and it kind of switches places, and it's quite interesting. I'd recommend listening to the music, to the movie, watching the movie while focusing on the soundtrack. And I'd also, there's a lot of hints and details in the film, or visually as well.
Yes, a lot of those motifs, like you're saying, Jay, they're intentionally like placed within the soundtrack to signify, oh, this is a character who's around. Like there's particular instruments that you only hear when certain characters are are seen, and it's the kind of like thing that I was using the Tenet soundtrack as inspiration, but I was really adapting it. I was translating it into something that like I could call my own, because of the requirements of the scene. Like, oh, this needs to be this long and then go into this kind of mood. So like I was taking, drawing ideas, but I was also like writing my own, which is so exciting because I've always wanted to like create soundtrack for movies. It's my dream. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you've got a good future ahead of you, I think. Another thing with the final kind of cut that I did kind of recently as a better editor is that I actually use silence a lot more. And there are actually, unfortunately, this is the case of most movies actually, but there are there are parts of the soundtrack which I actually kind of cut out in very few places.
Yeah, so I was
But yeah,
heartbroken, but no, I do
but that, I
see.
mean that happens in most films. But I
Yeah,
wanted
no,
to
I
use silence,
understand.
yeah, especially after a couple of the gunshots, especially after the final gunshot of the film, or the climax of the film where you have the gunshot and everything kind of goes quiet, and also when the character kind of enters the building and you have the footsteps and stuff. And I think that's, as in like a piece of advice, learn when to use silence, learn when you want things to be quiet.
Yeah.
That makes the loud shit even better.
Firstly, not really a question. Well, there will be a question, but I just wanted to say the upside down shot in the second half of the film when they're going up the blue stairs. I really like that. Like I didn't realize it was upside down at first.
Yeah, the
It was a very good choice.
the one just after they invert.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was.
yeah. That shot was. I was pissing myself shooting that scene because I had my DSLR and I was like, I really want to get this shot. It wasn't planned. I just kind of spontaneously thought of it, and I was like, I really want to get this shot. And so they were running down the stairs, and I kind of put my camera over the edge. I was like, oh. And you can't grip your camera too hard either because that's going to make you more likely to drop it. That was terrifying to shoot. There was also another shot in that place near the end, which I'm really happy with, and it's the rotating shot.
Oh yeah. I was going to
Really
mention
hard
that.
to do handheld. I mean, that was probably, I guess that was inspired by the one in Black Panther. Like the first one had a really good shot like that. It wasn't like an intentional reference, but I guess that's the case. Oh no, the reason why is I was thinking because it was like a clock, right? A clock, like
Yeah.
And then there was also another shot which like randomly came to me, and this was a shot in the mirror. If you guys remember that one, or it doesn't really
Yeah.
look like a mirror, but like when one of the characters is moving through and searching for someone or searching for danger, and they kind of, you see their silhouette go on one side and then they move and it's actually another side because it's a mirror.
Yeah.
And that
that's
happened
good.
because we were scoping that location. I'd already been there, but we were kind of looking for that location, looking for interesting things to kind of revolve that scene around. And I kind of saw, like, I think I saw one of my actors' reflection like jump like that, and I was like, wait, do that again, but do that with the gun in your hand. So we shot that. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool like spontaneous shots we got that I'm really proud of. So yeah.
Yeah, the you usually see like left right kind of messing around with, but not really up down, so that's cool. But kind of the kind of like minor question regarding just after that scene, when they're fighting and he has the gun, like I notice he lifts up the hand, the gun flies away and fires. I'm not quite sure what's happening there.
So that kind of what happened to the gun in the original script was a bit different. Like, I actually can't remember what it was, and we had to kind of change it while shooting that scene, which we were shooting improv. So I had to quickly think, like, how do we get rid of that gun, and then how to make sure that it's still inverted, basically. And so I was just like, throw it away. And I think it was in post when I realized that, oh, it could fire, and that would actually what would be like that, what lifted it up in the first place. So, I think especially with like in the Tenet movie as well, when it comes to the inversion of objects, you can be a bit more flexible with exactly how things work inverted. Because I mean, in reality, like, it's full of contradictions. But so I realized that'd be a really cool way to show that why that gun wasn't going off was because it was inverted, hence why it suddenly just randomly went off, and which was kind of what ended its motion. Because, like, I guess if you have like that gun sliding across the floor, and then you had the gunshot kind of shooting that direction, from a forward point of view, that would stop the motion. But then from a backward point of view, it would start the motion. So I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. So I think that was in post, but I can't remember. But I do know that moment was kind of improvised.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly ask some questions before I have to go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I cannot screen the final screen because of that came home. But I will say is this: who are the actual agents?
You are the agents. Well, the point of the agents in their organization is meant to be very ambiguous. I mean, are they even part of Tenet? Who knows, right? They could be part of another organization. They'd be part of emmett. God knows, right? I mean, they're meant to be ambiguous, and there's very basic characterization. You know, the buyer is kind of this kind of cunning, curious person, but has their moments of, I guess, like curiosity and stuff. You have the mentor and the protege. The mentor's kind of this steeled person, been in this for a while, but that facade kind of, her real personality kind of comes through that facade. She kind of makes a couple random jokes every now, like in the first kind of half of the film, where you see a real personality, and then you have the protege who's kind of very curious about everything and kind of trying to find out how this is, what's actually going on with this. So yeah, I mean, the characterization was never going to be super super complex, and I wanted to kind of more hint at their motivations rather than actually explain them. Another thing, when it comes to like backstory and stuff, obviously there is not much, but in the conversation scene in the beginning, in the blue stairs, and she talks about the mission that she did as a protege, and she talks about how, not to kind of explain it too much, go back and watch it, but she says that she did a mission in this same building in the same city a month from that point, obviously when she was younger, and that mission was something to do with cleaning up fragments of contraband material found nearby, which may be hinted at in the movie what that actually means. And then another thing that she said, that they were trying to stop some organization from taking it, but that the organization wasn't much of an organization anymore because their top dog had just been crossed off, which again may or may not be something that kind of happens in the film. So I wanted to kind of have this be really one half of a much bigger mission that it's kind of foggy around, but you can kind of see past the direct events which are shown in this film, and you can kind of see a little bit further as to kind of the backstory of things and the context of this mission. But again, the whole point is knowledge divided, right? That we're not meant to know, basically. And when I envisaged the other half of this mission, it could be anything from something really small, or it could be like this big ass like crazy mission with like inverted jet planes and like an army of people, like even bigger than the original Tenet film. The whole point is like you never know how big the other half of that mission could be. So I wanted to hint at scale, wanted to hint at something more epic. So yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that's just some pointers for when you next watch the film, and just think a little bit about what those lines mean. So yeah.
Do you plan to do more work in the future?
As in, yeah. Sorry.
To both of you, Dr. Ali and Jay, do you plan on doing more work in the future?
As in together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, next time I do my own film, I'll definitely talk to you about it if you want to join it.
Sure,
I'm probably
my DMs are open.
yeah,
Sure.
I'm gonna be quite busy for like the next year.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have an extremely busy summer.
I'm
I might
also
be
gonna be-
helping. I might be helping someone make a film, but they're a musician, so they want to do the music themselves. This is their first time doing a film.
Oh,
So
cool, yeah.
unfortunately, unless you want maybe consult help on that, we'll see. And then between this September and next September, I'm actually going to be in Berlin, and I could do a film in Germany, but it'd be a bit difficult because I'm a bit rusty with my German. But over in Berlin, I could write and prepare a film. I will write and prepare a film to shoot.
Could be a silent film.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I just fully allow you to shine. Yeah. I mean, you never know. I mean, yeah. I'm going to do lots of stuff in the future.
I'm gonna. Oh, we have an audience member.
Yeah.
My last question. So I went in here expecting a kind of Tenet backwards film effect kind of tech demo kind of thing, but I got a very interesting plot in terms of like twists and turns, plot twists, kind of one character dying, another character not, kind of thing. But a vibe for it gave to me is kind of the movie seems complicated. The older agent is introducing the newer agent to like a mission, and the newer agent kind of makes a mess of it and has to be taken out. Is like any like was it felt like a kind of theme of going into something overcomplicated in over your head and getting lost with it, which is kind of maybe how some people feel with Nolan films. Was like any of that intentional? Do you reckon?
That's a really good question. If that's your last question, I mean, if you want to ask another question, you're welcome to. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I originally was going to be more of just a tech demo. I mean, I'd made a time travel film before, and it was a tech demo pretty much. It was bad. There was no script. It was just an improvised like time travel story where like I cloned myself with split screen. But with this, yeah, I mean, it just kind of ballooned into a big story, and I think most of it really in the writing was less about the themes and characters, but was more of a response to Tenet. Not just trying to recreate it, but try and maybe develop off the feelings of it. Specifically in the kind of the first few minutes, it's sort of building up to. I mean, you guys probably knew that it was based on Tenet, but the first few minutes of the film are building up to the reveal of what the film is actually about, and then the next 10 minutes is kind of a build up and establishment of the locations and establishing kind of tying the knot before it's even like drawn out and stuff, right? And then from kind of really the middle half and everything just kind of collapsing and going to crap. Mission kind of failing, but also kind of not failing at the same time because it technically is a success. But in terms of the themes, when editing this film, there definitely was something interesting that I thought that I think maybe subconsciously influenced me. I think a lot of films that have like a theme are often subconscious influences from the nature of society and the general mood of the world. And for this film is like Tenet, kind of a pessimistic film. And I think, yeah, you raise a good point with the protege gets killed by the mentor. And I think like when I was writing the film, one of the reasons why I did that is because usually the mentor sacrifices themselves for the protege to win and survive and whatever. And I wanted to subvert that. But I think there is kind of a general mood in this society that younger people like myself are kind of being sacrificed by the older people for something we don't even understand. So I don't know to what extent that was really ingrained in the script subconsciously. But I think if you really want to apply a theme to it, you're more than welcome to watch this movie through that lens of, I don't know, climate change or like, societal crisis or whatever. I mean, even the Tenet movie comments on that very kind of minimally in some areas. So you're more than welcome to kind of see what you can get from this film from that. But yeah.
I have a question to ask you. It's more on a personal level, but
Yeah.
also not trying to brag. But like, why did you choose Chaos Max? Like you could have said no to me.
Well, there would be no point in saying no. I mean, you've been very good moral support. But yeah, I chose Chaos Max because I'd listened and watched Tenet. I have my Tenet DVD, but I actually watched a Chaos Max version of it. It's also high quality as well than a DVD. But the music's really cool, and the kind of the sound quality is really good, especially with headphones, which I have pretty good headphones. So I was like, my film is obviously like meant to have good music. Yet you have Dr. Al's really good music. You have kind of gunshots and all this sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, no, this would definitely like benefit from like sort of a KS Max screening. And I was like, you've been good moral support for this movie, so I also kind of owe you that the ability to kind of screen your exclusive KX Max version of this film. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. Anybody have any last questions? Oh, okay. All right, I am going to end the video. So if you guys wanna say goodbyes, and we can say goodbyes, and
Yeah, I just want to, like, on a final note, I mean, this is obviously, we have people here, but this also can be uploaded to whatever. I hope you enjoy the film. I hope you appreciate the film. I hope you watch it, and I hope you try and figure it out and enjoy it with your friends. There's a lot to unpack, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had. And also, if you are a student filmmaker, I am one. I'm not in the industry yet. I'm 19 and everything, so I'm not like experienced or anything. But I think there's nothing necessarily special about me. I'm a normal person, and I made something which I think is pretty cool. So take this as a piece of inspiration that you can do crazy stuff as a student filmmaker. You have complete creative control. Obviously, you're limited by financial resources, but you can totally get around that in certain things. Be inspired and good luck and make cool stuff, and send me your cool stuff as well. So yeah.
Dr. Lee, your turn.
Yeah, I'll actually end this by saying, I attempted to make my own Tenet short film, like around the same time, August 2021. Like I was in that Tenet phase. It was like, basically, I really wanted to make something special, but I was a bit out of my depth, and like what I did make, it didn't get very far at all, really. But I'm just really glad to have had the opportunity to make something, like while I was still passionate about Tenet. Like I found out Jay needed a composer, so I offered myself, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. And like, yeah, if I just want to say, like, if you are a student filmmaker, like I know how hard it is, but yeah, my advice would be like, find other people, because I was trying to do a lot of it myself, and like I think maybe in the future I'll have another crack at like fleshing out my ideas, and certainly Emmett's given me watching Emmett now has given me a lot of inspiration, and who knows, maybe I will do a film myself in the future. But yeah, like go for it. If you're thinking of doing something, don't hold back, and just talk with people, because the worst thing you can do is like sort of give up and lose hope like I did, and that's doesn't feel good. So just go for it.
I will say this as a person who's been watching Tenet since it actually came out first time in the cinemas. I remember watching it 15 times in the IMAX. I will say that it has come to a point where it has become part of my life now. And I really enjoyed the movie so much, to the point where I started to design my own little audio thing with KS Max. So I basically wanted to recreate the IMAX screen in my own headphones. So I basically created KS Max for that reason. And then we had more people enjoying it, and more people wanted more movies and soundtracks in KS Max. So I said, okay, sure. So I actually continued it. And when I heard about emmett being made, I was like, that's so cool. So, and ever since then, it's been going strong. And if people want to watch the Tenet version, the KS Max, and we have done a linear cut, which is Tenet in order. There, I'm pretty sure Jay would actually drop a link to the Discord in the actual description box. You can check it out. Basically join our actual Discord, and if you want that, you can just message me, and I'll give you the role, because that's the only way you can actually access those actual movies and releases. So yeah, and that's it from me.
Very cool.
All right.
All right, thank you very much for joining. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Everybody who's watching.